Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, Hush Blackwell, Barbara and Peter Gattermeyer, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: what happens to KCI if voters say no? What have voters actually said about new streetcar lines? And what one PhD tells other PhDs about guns on campus? Plus, of course, roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and talk about law enforcement in Kansas City, Missouri, with the recently named Chief of Police. Rick Smith joined the department in 1988 and served in a variety of assignments before being named chief about a month ago. He faces some serious and some might say intractable problems, including a mounting homicide rate. We'll talk about that and other issues as we welcome to Ruckus Kansas City, Missouri Police Chief Rick Smith. Chief, it's great to see you, and thank you very much for coming in.
It's great to be here.
I assume you've wanted to be a chief of police for quite some time. It's probably your lifelong ambition. Now that you have the job, what's it like? Is it what you thought it would be?
It is. It's one. I've told everyone, when you're in an organization for 29 years, to be selected to lead that organization is quite an honor, and I'm truly happy to be in this position.
I'm sure you're asked a lot about the mounting homicide rate in Kansas City, Missouri, and that probably is one of your top priorities, trying to find a way to deal with it. Is there much police can do to stop increasing homicides?
I think police can influence crime. I don't know that we can control it totally, but we should be able to influence the trends going up and down. So yes, we're in a review. As with the new administration, we're looking at our systems, what we can do better, deployments, all kinds of stuff, programs I've named someone specifically to work on crime initiative programs, a center point in the department that we haven't had before to work on just that issue.
I think there was a consultant study that came out before you became chief that suggested, to make it kind of simple, that more officers needed to be outside on the streets and fewer in offices doing administrative work. Is that something you will implement?
Well, the Matrix study said 37 officers, I think, was a recommendation to go back to patrol from other jobs. We're reviewing that right now. We're in the process of reporting on to that to the Board of Police Commissioners and what we think should happen. So yeah, we're using that findings as the foundation, as a review, as we go through.
There were some who thought that once there was an African-American police chief, the successors would always be minorities, African Americans or other minorities. Obviously, you're not a minority. I don't think anybody named Smith is probably a minority in the United States. How has the minority community reacted to your appointment?
I've had really good interaction, partnerships. People step up and say they want to help. What can they be part of? So far, things have been really good. And that partnership just doesn't come from me. That partnership comes from 1,300, roughly police officers who are out there every day working in communities.
How do you generally spend your time? 50-50 in the office half of the time, out on the streets half of the time, or how do you schedule yourself?
Well, since I'm new, I'm spending much more time on the administration of the department. So usually all day in the administration of the department, and then maybe a lunch in there, and then in the evening go to attend events.
You go to a lot of public meetings, answer questions from the public?
So right now I'm on doing all 6 patrol divisions to have a meet and greet and answer questions from the public. So I'm doing that. Of course, I've been on a variety of media outlets also, trying to let people know who I am.
Do you have a website or a blog page or something where you put out your comments every day?
I do. I've released 2 blogs since I've been chief, and we do have a website.
Do you worry about major protests like the kind we've seen in Ferguson and most recently in St. Louis? Kansas City has been spared those kinds of situations, and we all hope that we will continue to be spared. But do you worry about that, and do you have plans in case something of that sort happens?
Sure. We plan for every protest in the city. One of the things we do is we reach out to people who want to have a demonstration in the city, and we try and work with them so that they can have the demonstration they want peacefully, and so it's lawful. And so we coordinate with those people, lots of communication behind the scenes.
In a recent editorial, the Kansas City Star suggested changes to Kansas City, and one of them was local control over the police department versus state control. This has been an issue since you've been here and since I've been here before that. Are you able to give your comments, your point of view? Do you have an opinion about local versus state?
Well, Mike, after 29 years, I've only worked under state control, and obviously it's worked well for me. I don't see a problem as an issue it is. I can certainly see the residents of Kansas City saying, some of them saying, I don't understand why the police department's under our control, but the system we have now seems to be working very well. And back to your issue, we haven't had the problems that other cities have had. Maybe some of that is from the structure and the command staff we have in place in the police department.
Well, it is great you're getting out and doing these kinds of things on the media. We appreciate it. Hope you'll come back and see us again, and the best of luck in your career as Chief of Police.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. That is Kansas City, Missouri Police Chief Rick Smith. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Jason Grill is a senior advisor at Paris Communications. Denidre Herbert is the managing editor of The Sentinel, a conservative website covering Missouri and Kansas news. John Stevens runs Rock Hill Strategic, and attorney Steve Marakian runs everything else, and he is with the firm of Warsh, Hobbs and Marakian. It is good to see all of you again. Thank you for joining us. It was not a unanimous vote, but a decisive one, 10-2, as the City Council approved plans to put a one-terminal Kansas City airport on the November ballot. The council agreed with its selection committee's choice and endorsed Edgemoor, a company based in Bethesda, Maryland, to do the work if voters say yes. But time is short, and earlier polling has shown considerable opposition to abolishing the current 40-year-old structure many consider the essence of convenience. Before we talk about what happens if voters say yes, let's think about what happens if voters say no. Denidre?
I think the Kansas City Council ignores it and keeps moving. They pretty much, voters have kind of said repeatedly they're not real excited about this, and they just keep doing it. So I don't know why this vote would change their minds. They'll just keep doing what they can to make it happen.
So you think if voters reject this, the council will just try again with another vote, another campaign?
Yes, maybe like in the next week. They're done. They've decided it's happening.
Jason, you're a big supporter of a KCI one-terminal airport.
Sure.
Why is she wrong?
I just think that this is the vote. I mean, if it doesn't pass this time, I think the mayor is not gonna bring it up again. I don't think the council will for quite a while. I think this is the decision point for the Kansas City.
Do you have
Missouri
trepidation
residents.
about the results of the election?
I think it's going to pass. Obviously, I think it's. I've said that on the Geo Bond campaign. Everyone else sat up here and said that it's not going to pass. I think it will pass. I think people are moving towards the direction of a positive attitude about a new KCI, and I think as the campaign goes on throughout the next month or two, and the business community gets behind it, and everyone starts seeing more and more about it, I think that they're going to support it. I think it'll be close, but I think it'll get over 50%.
John, do you share his optimism?
I do. I think through the process that at times was a little messy, I do think it caused a lot of citizens to really think about what this terminal means, what the airport means for the future. Gave them a chance to really think about it, and I actually think it'll pass with a little bit higher. I think it'll be in the upper 50s.
Well, what does it mean? What would a no vote do? What would it change?
Sure. I mean, a no vote, I think, continues down a path of an antiquated airport becoming less and less convenient. There are a lot of questions. People will throw out things like it will lead to fewer flights, airlines will pull out. That's not going to happen. Airlines grow in Kansas City because of the population growth and travel growth. However, airlines will have less direct dailies. They'll have less. They're less willing to have flights that will transfer in and out of this airport. It will cause challenges, and eventually, with the 3.9% annual growth, this airport just does not work.
Steve, if you were telling people who want this to pass what they should emphasize in the campaign, what points would you make?
Well, I think that they should emphasize. And it's complicated. They need to simplify it greatly. But they need to emphasize that this is not something that is going to be paid for directly by taxpayers. Now, again, there's all kinds of arguments about, well, the taxpayers really are on the hook, and so I get all that. But you need to simplify it for a campaign. And the numbers go up dramatically when people think that they're not paying for it directly out of their tax dollars. It's being paid for by Edgemoor or whoever is going to be doing this. And that's not entirely true, but largely that's the way it's structured. Without that, and quite frankly, I don't think it's going to pass anyway. And I'm not pessimistic because I am a supporter of it. But I will tell you this: I don't vote in Kansas City. I wish I had. If it had been Burns and McDonnell, I think it would have passed very easily. Without Burns and McDonnell, I think the mess they had here and the fact they didn't choose a Kansas City company and design firm that would have been linked with them, I think is a serious problem, and I don't think it's going to pass.
I don't think all that matters in the long run. I think the mayor is extremely popular. I think that the points will be very simplified, like Steve was saying.
So.
Modern convenience, easier in and out, more flights, more non-stops, more transatlantic flight. You're going to be able to have so much more in the airport. It's going to make it easier. It's going to be just as convenient. And I think all those things will matter, Mike, and I think that the mayor's pretty popular. I think it'll get done.
Well, he wasn't popular enough to get the Burns and McDonnell option.
But I don't think at the end of the day, who builds the airport matters to people. Does it matter who's building the new convention hotel? Nobody cares.
Well, there is no new
Right.
convention
Well,
hotel.
when there is,
Hasn't
has
been
anyone asked
built
that
yet.
question? Does it matter who's building stadiums? Nobody asks these questions.
No,
usually.
but it's different, Jason, I think, in this sense. When they build the stadiums and build hotels, we have all these massive things, public-private partnerships. These people who come in to build these hotels are building them on the taxpayer dime, and we all know that. When Burns McDonnell steps up and says, we're going to build it, we're going to pay for it, we'll be on the hook for it, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it with Populous, which is the greatest design firm in the world. It's all right here in Kansas City. And then they come in with all this nonsense about some law firm comes up and says, well, it doesn't comply with such and such, and they choose Edgemore, which has a lawyer
One of the reasons I think it's going to fail.
People don't like that. I don't think people do.
Skidmore, Owings, Merrill, I think the story they will tell simply is this is still the same financing structure. It's privately financed, taxpayers are not on the hook, and it's modern convenience for all.
But when is
that
the
is the message.
Isn't the election November?
jobs.
Isn't the election November?
November 7th.
So when is all this stuff with the mayor and so forth and all this selling going to start taking place? I'm not
It's
They
seeing
already
don't even
started,
have
yeah. Congress is
a
doing
drawing
switches
yet, a
every day.
rendering
All I'm
of it.
saying is I'm not seeing the kind of promotion. I agree with you. The mayor's got to sell it.
Yeah, he
I'm
will.
not seeing it being sold enough to Kansas Cityans that they need to sell it for
They don't even
because
have
I'm
a
not seeing the
rendering yet
ads.
of
I'm not
it.
seeing the stuff.
I think you will see it.
You
I
will
hope
see it
so.
very
Okay.
shortly.
Well,
I
we'll
hope it
see,
passes.
we'll see if we see it. We now have to move on to topic number 2. Dr. John Lott is a believer in a lot of guns to stop violence. The president of the Crime Prevention Research Center dismisses concerns of college professors at KU and elsewhere who wear body armor to class or resign because of gun carry legislation. In a column to the Kansas City Star, Lott wonders if these nervous professors ever get off campus. Do they ever go to restaurants, movie theaters, or grocery stores where there may be people with legally carried concealed handguns? Lott also claims that over the decades, not a single permit holder who was allowed to carry on university property has committed a crime with his gun. We should note, however, that in Kansas, people over 21 can carry concealed without a permit. Nonetheless, will anxious parents, students, and others be eased by Dr. Lott's reassuring column? Steve?
Well, not really reassured by his column, but the reality is that his column, in my view, is 100% accurate. These professors, this is nonsense, and if they want to resign, they can resign. Wearing body armor is just stupid. Okay, I'll put it this way. Okay, I am one of those people who is roundly criticized by liberals as being a science denier because I asked the question, okay, not does the climate change, but is it being changed by man and so forth and so on. So I'd ask this. All of you liberals out there who want to do away with concealed carry or prevent them being on campus, give me the science. Show me the number of incidents. Show me how it has caused danger on campus, and then I might listen to you. But the reality is, Lott is correct. Statistically, there is no science to support the notion that carrying concealed creates danger.
And just before we go on to John, Steve, Lott is talking about people who have permits.
Yes.
We're not talking always about people with permits in Kansas. There are people who have the right to carry concealed simply because they live in Kansas and are over 21.
All I'm saying is...
The training doesn't matter.
Exactly. All I'm saying is that people carry guns everywhere, and carrying them on campus, in my view, there's no statistical evidence to say that when somebody carries a gun on campus, with a permit or without a permit, therefore the campus people, the students and teachers, are subject to being mowed down.
Okay, John.
So that's all a great argument if there were science and research. However, I want to know why. Why does the federal government, why do state governments, why have they continually blocked funding for research on gun violence? It's because I think they're scared of what they will find when they actually dig into the research to prove or disprove these notions. That's one of the challenges.
Well, I remember when concealed carry first became an issue in Missouri, and we looked at FBI documents and statistics that did suggest that in areas where concealed carry was permitted, things were safer.
That is out there.
You remember that?
I do, absolutely. And it's nationwide.
You don't even have to
you can
see the
look at it.
research. You have laboratories all over the country. Chicago, I mean, Kansas City's not that much safer anymore, but Chicago has some of the
Chief
strictest.
Smith will be glad to hear that.
Sorry, Chief. Chicago has some of the strictest gun control laws in the country, and I swear you can't swing an elbow without getting mowed down in Chicago.
Well, you know, Jason,
Statistically, it
I must
appears.
be on the right place.
why the emphasis on college campuses? It is legal to carry a gun anywhere in Kansas unless there's a sign blocking it for some reason legally. Why worry about campuses? Why not worry about a restaurant or a streetcar or
you can
whatever?
make those analysis, but I think it's just because of students and the amount of people that are on college campuses. We see active shooters all the time. There's a lot of people there. They're young.
Wait a second, Jason.
On
You don't get
campuses
away with
where
that.
they're not-
What is this? We see active shooters all the time. How many incidents?
Right.
We have seen incidents, but to say we've seen
All the
active shooters
time.
all the time.
I'm not talking
is-
about on college campuses. I'm just
I'm
saying
sorry.
in general,
Okay. I
in
thought you
general,
meant-
in
I'm-
America and in the world.
I apologize. I
But
thought
no,
you
but
did.
like that's the point. I mean, I think that's where you get the story is because it's a college campus. I just believe we should have permits.
Demeter, I
That's all.
remember-
I think there should be permits and training.
That's it.
I remember years ago when Missouri first talked about concealed carry, I was talking with a state legislator, and she said, can you imagine if this is approved, I can't take my children to a restaurant and sit in a booth without worrying that the person in the next booth has a gun. I said, how can you not worry about that now?
Well, that's the
I
thing.
mean, as if a law will stop people from doing something.
Well, there is a law against shooting somebody
Yeah.
else, so that's covered.
There is?
And there is. I mean, I don't think it's worded like that, but
But they lose customers
there's
because
also.
of that.
I mean, if a sign on a door makes you feel safe, I recommend getting a T-shirt that says "It's illegal to shoot me" and wearing that everywhere. Problem solved.
Now, some states that allow concealed carry require that there be training. I take it you think the training should be required, as it was in Kansas for a while.
I am not an opponent of concealed carry. I am an opponent of complete carte blanche, untrained concealed carry. I do think if the argument is the concealed carry exists to help protect you and to protect others around you, to prevent mass shootings, et cetera, proof time and time again. Ask the FBI. They say people with zero to no training, people who do not have the proper training, simply they're not effective
I
in
think that's a
stopping
good
mass
common
shootings.
ground, right? Get a permit, an 8-hour class or whatever it is.
Take an 8-hour class.
I don't look as a constitutionalist. I don't think you have to do that. However, you know, as a compromise, I'm okay with getting permits.
I'm not okay with it. Why don't
I-
you need Why don't you need training for a chef's knife? Why can you have a chef's knife without training?
Yeah, I think the firearm's
it's
a little different. But
Oh.
nevertheless-
quite as
Okay.
dangerous, but the weapon is not the problem.
What do the results of an election mean if they are ignored? Well, one way or another, one side or the other may find out as the battle over streetcar expansion continues. Either the people who back expanding the streetcar line to the plaza and beyond with their votes will prevail, or the voters who would stop expansion without a citywide vote of approval will. Both groups have won elections. The expansion vote was just for residents of the area involved, and planning continues. The vote to prohibit expansion without a citywide vote of approval was obviously citywide. Is there a way to resolve all of this without numerous amounts of litigation and hard feelings? And we start with John.
I think the short answer is no. I think there will be litigation. I tend to believe, I have some opinions, I think the courts will determine this. I think it will drag on. But I do think that the decision to continue to have the election in October 7th and to move down the road towards the future of a needed expansion of the streetcar line is necessary, and then let the courts determine how.
Will there have to be a citywide vote before that expansion continues?
The courts are going to have to decide. I personally think that election and the $1,000 a day fine and all of these other things, I think that'll be thrown out. But that's for a judge to decide. That's for a court.
All right.
The people that live on the streetcar line are the ones paying for it. So.
Exactly.
And I live there, and luckily I live in an apartment, so I don't have to pay for it.
But can the planning continue for the expansion and the voting continue until there is a citywide vote saying yes?
I think it will continue, and it can continue. Yes,
and it can.
Well, I would think it could not. I mean, you've got a new city law that says you have to have a citywide vote of approval before any expansion that would involve the city, and this certainly involves the city, can continue.
But I believe there are two different issues, and I think that the planning and moving forward and preparing for it is different than actually implementing it.
Right.
I tend to think, and like you said, it will be resolved ultimately in the Court of Appeals of the Missouri Supreme Court. It seems to me that a city vote or a vote of the people in the affected district is perfectly legitimate and should be approved. I see no reason that I can see why it is people who are in that area and whose businesses and complexes, apartment complexes, may be substantially benefited or who would have to pay that tax, they should be able to decide. And people living in other parts of the city, up in Liberty, for example, in my view, should not be able to block something that would be a significant economic boon potentially to the voters in the district.
Except that's what the ordinance that was approved by the voters says.
And that's why, and I think it's going to have to be resolved in court, because I think that ordinance itself was probably inappropriate, and I think the city council should continue to push back as much as they can, because I think, quite frankly, now that we have the streetcar, okay, the idea that people in Liberty and Gladstone and Raytown would block us to a 2-mile stretch or whatever is nonsense.
I think just residents in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, but there's some residents in Liberty that are living in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to a
expanded.
slightly altered topic. In an editorial last Sunday, the Kansas City Star said this kind of an issue, coupled with the fact that the police department was under the control of the state and not the city, and the fact that the convention hotel announced in May 2015 still has not progressed beyond being announced, that the city was losing its mojo. So, Denidri, can you define mojo for us and tell us if Kansas City is indeed losing it?
I don't know that they ever had it to begin with. I hate to say it, but I live in Johnson County, and we seem to have kind of things together, and we know where we're going and what we're doing.
We
in
got
Kansas
the mojo.
City, I don't know what is going on. So to start with the idea that they had mojo, I think is a stretch. That editorial was baffling to me, because they talked about basically the problem was everybody wasn't just getting on board with Mayor James. It's like their problem was everybody doesn't just do whatever Mayor James says, which I find shocking.
Well, Jason says he's so popular that people do anything that he says.
He is
Debate is a good thing. Discussion.
What about mojo, John? Do you have to have it in just Kansas City, Missouri, or does the entire area play a role in mojo?
Mojo is KC, and KC is the region.
Yeah.
And I think we do have it. I think we continue to have it. I think you only need to look at all of the development that's happening, all of the things that are happening, the attitude that Kansas Cityans have. I do think that. And as far as these projects, big projects are complex. Complex projects take time. And you know what? I don't think that that's a sign that we're somehow stagnating at all.
Steve, final quick question. Do you have any mojo left?
I have plenty of mojo, but I want to say, I think they are losing it, and I'm surprised because I think the mayor is not getting these issues through. And the airport, the streetcar, the hotel.
So you think that's what it takes to have mojo, big projects?
I got to stop you there.
I do. In Kansas City.
We're going to head now to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckheads have 30 seconds each to celebrate or vitiate people and events in the news, and we start with John.
Sure. Speaking of mojo, my toast is to the team, the Greater Metropolitan team working on the Amazon HQ2 bid. Not so much about because of what Kansas City can do for Amazon, but these are the type of lightning rod, pull the region together discussions that we need to have to prepare our city for the next century. And that's important to have those conversations as we bid for these, and sometimes you need those to spark it.
All right, Jason.
That's a great point. I want to roast Twitter for expanding its characters to 280 from 140. I mean, I like going to Twitter. I think it's a great avenue to pick up news, pick up sports stuff, to get breaking news. And I don't go to it for a 280 character message from somebody about what they're doing that day. So I'm kind of wish it'd stick with 140. Maybe it's the get off my lawn mentality, but Twitter, stay with 140. It's a good thing.
Steve, what's your tweet?
I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted by the appalling lack of respect shown by the ignoramus NFL players and owners who have neither served their country or even know what they're protesting about. You folks know nothing about true oppression. Take your protest to North Korea or Cuba or Venezuela and see how it sells in those countries. Disrespect for our flag shows an utter lack of appreciation for the Constitution that has given you the opportunity to enjoy the enormous riches and freedom that you have precisely because you're an American. My salute goes to my West Point brother-in-arms, Alejandro Villanueva of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a true American patriot who lives the proud tradition of West Point, duty, honor, and country.
Denidri.
I want to give this toast to the Kansas Democratic Party, which this weekend is hosting its annual Demo Fest, where some party members are having a scuffle. They're trying to ouster the secretary of the Democratic Party, and they're a mess. They have a website to document all of the drama, and I am often upset about the way conservatives make their efforts known in Kansas, and I look at them and think, thank you, Kansas Democrats.
Okay. And finally, here is a roast to a professor in San Diego who offered his students extra credit if they took a white privilege quiz. Among the questions, can you find a Band-Aid that matches your skin color? Can you be sure most of your professors will be the same color as you? And can you be late to class without having your tardiness reflect on your race? Here is the question that should have been asked. Why would any professor give or any student take such a stupid quiz? Here's a programming note before we wrap up here. Stay tuned immediately following our show as KCPT presents LZ Kansas City, featuring emotionally charged stories of local veterans who served in the Vietnam War. Landing Zone Kansas City coming up next. And that's Ruckus for this week. We're back next Thursday at 7. Now, for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon, saying, Vietnam veteran that I am, saying thanks for watching and good night.